act like this, please.
爸，完了爸。哥，我钱不够用，借我钱呢。
快给我拍！为什么一辈子有人看不起？Hello， my darling。不管前辈最精明，阿哥地都多灵，不管前辈谁不行。
What do you know of the history of the Singapore cinema?
Uh, 1950s.
I'm not as familiar as I should be.
With like L. Krishnan and P. Ramlee. Actually, I should know more about this. We had a very vibrant studio system, I would say in the 50s and possibly even the 60s. And we were working very closely with Malaysia to come up with these big studio films.
It's almost like a mini Hollywood in Singapore, and we produce mostly musicals and horror film. I just like it when you see two mediums like this, which are so different, combined together. You know, we are the only place where ghosts will actually sing song, you know, in a film.
We had a lot of Malay films, over 300 titles that were, made within a 20-year period. But really, we were like a hub. And I suppose, being this geographical position that we are in, it really played a lot into the industry.
Pergi kau dari sini, pergi! Ya, aku akan pergi sesudah kau.
I'm Peranakan, so the Malay horror films, the Pontianaks, were always such a draw. We all used to gather in neighbors' houses and families and kids all come together to watch it. At that point in time when you were young, you didn't think that it was shot in Singapore or for that matter.
And what was interesting about those screenings was that they usually didn't have any English subtitles. I watched them without, but I really enjoyed them anyway.
We had a very vibrant industry at that point in time.
There were two big studios, Cathay Chris and the Shaw Studios. So it's very much like, MGM. They had their own stars, they had their own directors. P. Ramlee was the biggest. In terms of actors, there was Maria Manado. She was the big star. She was Elizabeth Taylor of her time. So she played the Pontianak, yeah. After the studio system collapsed and we're no longer part of Malaysia and became independent, I think there were a lot of changes, a lot more focus on, I guess, getting Singapore to a state where the government felt it was successful, and somehow the cultural landscape, I think, took a back seat, in particular making films, because it's so resource intensive. Whereas if you were an artist or a theatre practitioner, it doesn't require so much resources.
At the advent of TV, things obviously started to come down. The demand for people going to the cinema started to go down. TV took over.
And then, of course, comes the 1980s when we famously had not a single feature film that was made.
Things became silent. But if people really had the passion, they were going around making their independent films. And maybe finding partners and just trying, to make their films happen in whatever way they could.
It was a labor of love, and seriously, I had such a great team. A lot of people involved were friends of mine, and sometimes we'd be working like 18 hours a day, and I was really petrified that people would get sick, because we didn't have a lot of days to shoot the film. And I remember I was giving everybody vitamin C. I gave some people so much vitamin C they were having diarrhea, But it was worthwhile, you know, and we had to get the film done.
My first love is always has been music. So at that time was like, after I came out from the army, the first thing I did was to work in a record company. And my first and foremost love is always music. So I had a band, a rock band called the Padres, and I was working at BMG and then subsequently Rock Records. And Eric also being a fan of local music, wanted to incorporate a lot of like local music inside. So it was just like a couple of friends who came together and say, let's have fun.
Actually, I owe everything, you know, to the Singapore International Film Festival, especially Philip Chia, who was the programmer, and he came up with this idea of having a Singapore short film competition back in 1991. And in '94, they came up with a new award called the Special Achievement Prize. And when I won the award, I wasn't very sure what it was, but then I discovered that it was sponsorship from Kodak, from post-production house, from rental facilities. And the beautiful thing was, at the bottom of the paper, there was no number. So I went to knock on the doors of the sponsors and I said, look, rather than you just give me enough for a short film, why don't you give me more, you know, so that I can make a feature? And that's really how I made my first feature, Mee Pok Man. And with its success, traveling to the festivals and all, investors came to me for my second feature, 12 Storeys.
My first memory of a Singaporean film, I would say, was Eric Khoo's 12 Storeys. He had made short films, and actually, he won at the festival, the Singapore International Film Festival, and I was very motivated by that. So when I wanted to tell my story 2 years later, I decided to enter it at the same festival. I was very lucky because my first film won an award. And I think that gave me confidence. It gave me a small amount of money. I used it to make the next film.
Looking back, I think, you know, it's been wonderful with the Singapore International Film Festival, because a lot of the first batch of filmmakers to actually be making features, there was myself, Kelvin Tong, Jack Neo, Royston, we all, Jun Fung, all came from the Singapore International Film Festival, submitting little short films in.
Despite growing up in the 70s and the 80s with an absence of Singapore cinema, the notion of Singapore cinema still resonated within me, because I think first and foremost, I started liking the idea of Singapore stories. Unlike banking or property, whenever you approach somebody to invest in a film, they're going to go, show me some track record, show me, but you have no track, I never made a film. Even if they say, never mind, show me track record of your industry, the film industry, but there's no industry. One of our strategies was actually sort of cold calling. And one of the doors I managed to knock on was YTC, which turned out to be the landlord of Peninsula and Excelsior hotels. And I think the boss, maybe he was having a very quiet afternoon. He thought it was very funny to listen to two filmmakers pitch.
What Kelvin Tong and I used to do was we'd go to different people that we had met and do what we call the monkey show. So we literally, like, between the two of us, do all the, like, act out the whole script. And of course, he was better at the motorcycle sounds.
When we did Mee Pok Man and 12 Storeys, I mean, not a lot was happening. So it was really difficult, but I would say it was important for us to actually just push and work really, really hard.
We didn't have a film industry, but we had an advertising industry. And these were people who were working on $2 million SIA television commercials. Back then, commercials were really huge. And suddenly you're asking them, oh yeah, we've got like 300K, can you do this? And a lot of them would just laugh at us in our faces.
我们就是也不能这样做，对不对？然后机器来也不对的，机器来哦，它一般上人家拍片啊用的那个机器哦，是没有那个摩托的声音的，我们的是有摩托的声音。因为要拍广告片嘛，广告片通常都是后面在配音嘛。可是我们呢没有办法，也没有钱的，不可能就拿它现有的，然后拍出来的时候那个声音很嘈，就全部录进去嘛。那也没有钱去配音。 也不知道应该怎么配音的，就是反正就是很潮，就是觉得这戏是很潮。可是美国的一个编剧，一个影评人很好笑，他说这部戏很真实。他说新加坡是一个发展中国家，所以他到处都有工地的声音。 其实就是我们就是不懂得收音嘛。
是人人的最爱，的最爱，没有钱，生活是嘎纳塞，嘎纳塞，为了钱，我到底在做些什么？有时候我自己也不明白。
And this was the day before internet. So we can't go to YouTube and like, okay, the 101 of YouTube. How do you do a workflow for VFX? Basically, a lot of people were like, how?
It's a first child. You sort of don't know how to mix the milk formula. You don't quite know how to carry it. You drop it sometimes. It's a first child.
I wish the film industry didn't die. Local film industry didn't die in the 1980s. The experiences, right, would have been passed on down from the generation of filmmakers, not just directors, but back-end people, producers, line producers, grip, cameramen, recordists, Foley artists. All this would have been passed on to the next generation coming out in the 1990s. That was, I think, the hardest, one of the most challenging things I think a lot of us went through. Everybody has to learn from scratch. We are actually back to square one.
Everyone who was anyone in the film industry, a very fledgling film industry, sort of was involved.
There was no Singapore Film Commission, there was no support. And that time people were shooting on film, and you know how expensive that is, and shooting on like Aeriflex and, you know, expensive days.
There was this great desire to just help lah. I'll change in the toilet of the provision shop and then come out. And then at one time, the auntie was she was so concerned for me, she actually set up a table for me to change into my costume.
Really, more than anything else, it was really the support and the camaraderie of the crew, the production team and the cast, right, who were just like, okay, balls in, let's just do it.
So slowly but surely, you find your gaffer, you find a camera assistant, you find your sound man.
I didn't know anything about filmmaking, so I basically knocked on everyone's doors to ask them to help me make this documentary. Jasmine helped me by editing it in her after hours at VHQ.
I'll come back like after midnight and then try to edit the film together.
I don't know whether we actually have an industry per se. I think maybe we have a film community.
And I realized that was how the early years were for us.
要去找钱啊，拍钱不够用的时候呢，我们找了很久，大概有1-2年哦。很多人都问你说你的戏有没有飞车？没有，有没有打斗？没有，有没有动作？没有，有没有这个情色？我们说没有。然后呢，他说那你们的戏要卖什么？我们就跟他讲说，我们卖的新加坡人的生活 star。他说谁管新加坡人的 star？
Hollywood back then really had perfected this craft and formula for making films that were really universal, and as well as, I think back then they had the highest production quality. The unfortunate implication of that kind of appetite for imported products also led to a diminished interest in local films.
Our publicity for local film isn't quite there. I mean, it's natural. Your budgets are smaller.
那时候我们还一直记得跟这个电影公司讲说这是一个新的电影，你就广告可以做大一点什么。然后电影公司是说我们是帮你们省钱的，因为这些钱都是你的钱呐。那当然也没错啦。所以他扔的广告就小个了。那很好笑，那个时候乔宾东还是 Straits Times 的记者嘛，他看了之后他替我生气了，他就是问那个电影公司为什么你们给啊？他说其实是省钱。好了就省钱。
When I Not Stupid came on, my boss told me that, hey, I was told that you are trying to fight against a Hollywood title. Do you want to move out? And I said, no, I will not move out. I remember at that time we had midnight shows, and it was before Chinese New Year, the week before Chinese New Year. I went to the Tiong Bahru cinema, and at night, 9 something, no one there. it's like empty. You know? Then I went to the next door. It was How to Marry a Millionaire. It was a Hong Kong film and was quite crowded. I called Jack. He said, "Hey Daniel, 我在Tampines 嘞，没有人嘞 ，no one also."
我们当然是贺岁片，所以在1个礼拜前呢，我们就开始放映了。那我们去到戏院的时候，我们很害怕，因为真的戏院里面5个人、3个人这种，哇，你真的很灰心。
So it's like, oh dear. It was on a Saturday. I called for an urgent meeting on Sunday with UIP bosses, with Jack and his wife, with the whole Raintree team, and we said, are we confident of this film? If we are confident, let's do something not done before. So for the next 1 week leading up to the release, what we did was we invited 10,000 people to watch I'm Not Stupid for free.
老师说，如果李老师给我们摸他的底，对我们的数学会有帮助吗？你可以别讲话吗？
Students, teachers, principals, parents.
大家各自去找了，你找一班，我找一班，很多人去找了很多人来看。
We didn't manage, 10,000, but we managed 6,000. Normally the release of a film, it opens big and it goes down this way, right? I'm Not Stupid went up this way. And it went on and on and on and on.
Train to be cowards! Fight for myself! Fight for myself! With the club!
Pay! 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 Pay!
Not scared. What happened?
Ghosts. I see ghosts. I'm not lying. I really saw them. They're all around the streets.
同学们，我们现在上英文课了啊！跟我念一次累死，累死，累死，肥死，肥死。
At that time, I think I had just started work, and I was amazed that it was the first time that I was actually in a cinema filled with people who laughed at the jokes and could see themselves, it reflected in the characters, and there was so much identification with that. And I think it struck me at that point that's the difference between a local film and any other film, that you can identify with the problems, the accent, the locations.
Shock movie, heartwarming.
Enjoyable. Lucky Boy is fun. Lucky Boy is a very punny movie.
Director is very smart, combine both scary and hilarious things together.
Very entertaining.
Very relatable also.
But this movie is awesome. My favorite character is the canteen chobu.
Such stories resonate so well with our locals, watching ourselves on screen and having a laugh, and at the same time, facing the realities of what Singapore life is all about.
This is going to really excite and give the young people a chance to see that their future and the award, and I congratulate the awards in the Cannes Festival, and I think this is going to be a new breakthrough for many films to come.
I think from the point I was like 10 years old onwards, I was very addicted to watching films. There was this old LD shop near my home, and my dad had like a subscription, so I would rent all the less known titles.
My parents will be very busy because they're working, so they give me this booklet of like 100 voucher for LDs, so I could just go to the LD shop and then I just pick whatever I want.
那时候父亲每次带我去戏院看那些 Shaw Brothers 的武侠片啊，
然后后来我只是到了当兵的时候，我才大概知道我想做什么。那时候唯一可以去的一个课程就是尼安 Poly 的一个 Advanced Diploma in Film Production。
I sussed around and then I found like film sound and video course at Ngee Ann Polytechnic, and I went to the open house. I thought it was very hands-on, something that I like because I'm not very academic.
I made a decision to go to film school at a very young age, at 15. I remember I was buying books from Wheelock Place Borders about film directors, about film directing, and everything I research on points to the fact that one needs to go to film school.
It was the only film school in Singapore at that time. I fell in love with the idea of filmmaking, of make-believe, of being able to tell a story.
I remember when I was in film school, I made my short film literally for my grandma. And we spent so many months on it, and she watched it on the big screen. She's like, what the hell is that? She didn't get it at all, and I felt quite sad, that part of me always feel like, how would my grandma feel about this story that I'm trying to make?
And at that time, it was still a bit of a challenge in the sense that, if your grades are good enough to go to JC, you have to fight to the bitter end with your parents to let you go to poly.
How come you got 95 only? How to get into Nanyang Primary?
At that time, things are, I think, a bit different now.
I was in the first batch of students enrolled in FSV. There were 40 of us. In 2018, there are only 10 of us remaining. The rest have moved on, doing property, getting married.
Anywhere in the world, the attrition rate for students graduating from programs in the arts is very high. Out of 100 students graduating from one class year, 10 years later, maybe there'll only be 10 left in whatever particular industry, and that's just a sort of process of natural selection, But I think it's important to begin with being able to give that sort of experiences to a wide range of people.
I find cinematography was really interesting, how to measure lighting, the ratio and all. Since I really want to be a director, then I might as well just go and be a cam op or learn something about cinematography.
Studying film was the only thing that I always wanted to study, nothing else that I had my heart on. Back in film sound video, we were shooting in film. You just struggled to shoot in 16mm because it was so expensive. When digital came in, I told myself there's no excuse for you not to shoot anything, right?
With the emergence of all the new film schools in Singapore, the students now, they are a lot more well-informed, and there are a lot of young people coming up to me to ask me about how to get into producing and all that. So I think they have different career aspirations rather than just want to be director or writer. Yeah, it's quite exciting.
So now that you have good film schools like ADM, like Putnam, FSV, and Temasek Poly, you guys have this alumni, and you have your teachers to go back to, you have the school to support you. So I think that's really wonderful as well.
So what you have beginning from year 2000 onwards, you had a steady influx of professionals coming into our industry every year, and that not only is great in terms of making up in terms of numbers, because filmmaking was very lonely at once upon a time, but I think also in terms of the amount of ideas, young people always bring with them new forms of storytelling, and they actually refresh the industry.
Come on. Opinion. I'm sending you to a better place, Randy.
When we wanted to make Apprentice, we knew that the scale of it was going to be bigger. Not for the sake of being bigger, but really just because the story required it. We needed to have a prison, and we knew that with the locations not being available to us, we needed to travel, we needed to basically piece together a fictional prison that doesn't exist in real life. The resources required for it was a lot more, so it became a 5-country co-production.
The craftsmanship of filmmaking has to catch up with the sophisticated stories that our filmmakers can tell.
我小时候常做梦，
梦到陌生的地方，古怪的东西。
The French and the Dutch, they do so much post-production in that part of the world. They have very high level kind of expertise that we can tap into. After all, this film is a film about the migrant perspective. It's about the migrant situation. And even my actors, they are not all local. They are from China and Bangladesh. Everyone coming in with their own perspective from the outside.
The crew get the chance to work with international crew, and we get to learn how do they do things.
Personally, I feel like the higher mission of a film is simply to break down barriers, to break down walls between different cultures, different nationalities, different races and types.
You know, when we shot in Thailand in the small village, right? Then everyone, they cook for us, and it's a huge sort of celebratory sort of thing. People want you to shoot. It's like, wow, you want to shoot in my house? Oh yeah, please, you know.
It's very hard trying to make a film in a foreign language in another country, and then dealing with animals and a gigantic elephant is so hard to move around.
I knew of Anthony from Ngee Ann Poly, and after he made Ilo Ilo, he messaged me one day to tell me that he would be possibly interested to producing my first feature film.
It was quite difficult when I was making my first film. I was one of the producers on the film itself. You know, I had to find the financing, the resources, the crew, the cast. Perhaps I could do something for a lot of other filmmakers around me that I admire.
I actually really like my generation of filmmakers. A lot of us went to the same school, so me, Anthony, Jun Feng, Chris, we kind of witnessed each other grow up. And I think what's also nice is knowing that there is a group of filmmakers who are completely aware of your struggles of making films in Singapore.
We came at a time when there was something for us to kind of stand on.
In the 80s, if you don't see a lot of Singapore films, you don't believe that you can do it. So people like Eric Khoo and Kelvin Tong, these are our pioneers that took that chance.
When did Singapore gain its independence?
Last year.
Very funny. Try again.
Yesterday.
When I finished shooting 12 Stories, I remember I wanted very much that there could be some form of support.
Around that time, I think we were waiting for a shot to be set up, and then we were just talking about the state of the film industry or not at that time, because there's no industry to talk about except for 1 or 2 movies, right?
So together with my 2 friends, Lucilla, who acted in 12 Stories, and my co-writer of 12 Stories, James Toh, put together a white paper calling for a Singapore Film Commission to be set up.
When we went to overseas festivals, we realized that, for example, in Europe, a lot of countries actually have programs to help promote their local films. France, which is a very large country, still has their own ways of helping to support and finance their local films. And if we want our society in Singapore to be documented on film, then we have to start supporting and finding our own voices in this medium.
He offered me office space at Zhao Wei, so I sat down there and I started messaging and calling and faxing different people in Germany and in Taiwan and all that. And I think everyone was just so generous. So kind of so wrote out what I thought would be the most ideal situation.
And so we sent the white paper to Prime Minister's office. And within a week I got a call, and somebody from PMO says, okay, we're looking at this white paper. And I think 6 months later or 8 months later, the Singapore Film Commission is done.
I was like, wow.
Our film industry
has a much longer tradition, but it didn't get a chance to grow and develop the way a regular industry does.
We have to make up for lost time. So I think if you want to kickstart the industry, you need a funding body like that.
They supported every one of my feature films.
They funded my education and they helped to actually basically fund, I think, all my short film.
Even my own film, my final year project, we also got a grant.
Our little baby has grown.
The films made in Singapore are being recognized. That means people identify with it, right? That it is an important story to be heard or to be seen.
We were unanimous in our first round and have chosen to award the Camera d'Or to Anthony Chen for Ilo Ilo.
It is a greatest honor for me to get this award. It's also a great honor for my country because this is the first time a feature film from Singapore has actually won an award in Cannes.
The World Cinema Dramatic Special Jury Award for Screenplay goes to Pontianak.
This year, Golden Leopard goes to Alan the Imagine by Yang Xiuhua.
About 10 years ago when I was traveling to festivals and I say, oh, I'm a Singaporean filmmaker, and then have you seen any Singapore films? Very little people knew any film, not even just saw any film from Singapore, but knew anything about Singapore cinema. But nowadays we travel and everyone has seen at least one or two films, you know. So things change, you know, and of course, you know, once you, they are the one who transport the culture of a country into an international audience.
A film represents one of the most easily exportable cultural products. Film represents or reflects who we are as a people, who are we as a society.
Film isn't just a commercial product. Films are recognized for its cultural value.
It's records, it's an expression, it's sometimes a very personal, just a very personal feeling, a personal story.
I met Fran and he kind of watched my short films and he said he was interested in making a feature film and he wanted me to write a story. I completely rejected the idea because I said, no way. Fran didn't give up. The following year, he actually encouraged me and I relented, and then I met Fran and then I met Jeremy and you know, we came together as a team, and then of course I got the grant from the Singapore Film Commission in 2012, and then everything fell into place.
In 2013, the Little India riots happened, and actually I was writing the script. Fran and Raja both texted me to say that, are you in the office? If you are, don't leave. I left, I went down, I saw the end of it, I didn't see the rising of it. I saw the smoke, I saw the clearing of the crowd, I saw the police sirens. And I think this image sort of became something important for Raja and I when we were talking about how we can evolve the script to something that becomes what we experience now as locals who are welcoming Indian workers and as Indian workers who are trying to make a living and who maybe are not understood so well by the local community.
Hoa mi chút lái số
In a Singapore society, everything is moving so quickly. By telling stories through film, it allows me to slow down things a little bit. I think the most fun film that I really enjoyed was A1 because I finally get to do a musical. I like to do musical and I like bizarre costumes, a celebration of really bad songs and really bad costume, and you know, I just like all this really tacky stuff. And we learn to laugh at ourselves and don't take things too seriously.
I did kind of watch a fair bit of music videos and Indian films and those musical films in ways, how they shot it, how they do it, and end of the day, looking at your product on the screen, creating something out of nothing, they get a satisfaction from.
That's a point in time where a lot of your childhood memories start sort of seeping back into your head, and you know, I just remembered the Filipino helper that we had, you know, in my family, and she was with us for 8 years, taking care of me and my 2 brothers.
Why you do that to me, huh? Why you do that to me? I don't care if you like me or not. If you don't like me, I don't care. But your mom, she employed me. Huh?
During the premiere of the film, it was like 800 strong audience, you know, there was laughter everywhere. And then by the end, they were all in tears. And that was when I realized that this little film about a Filipino maid, you know, about a small middle-class family living in a HDB flat, actually connected with audiences, you know, in France, in Europe, from cultures everywhere.
I was attending a lot of film festivals and I noticed that there were a lot of Singapore films, but none made from the Malay community. I kind of asked myself, why isn't my community being represented? You know, maybe I should do something about my own community. And so that's how even until now, I deliberately do films, Singaporean stories, but based on the Malay community context.
Bila punya istri, jangan boleh pakai mini. Sifatnya lelaki, suka lihat yang
Music is universal, right? We all share the same food. We all share the same music. Everyone can appreciate, can understand where we have this common language or common heritage that we can talk about.
We cannot stop places from tearing down, we cannot stop food from disappearing, but at least we can archive it for the next generation. Film offers a platform for fellow Singaporeans to have a glimpse and appreciate and also cherish what we have. It's better to appreciate them while they're still around and see what we can do rather than we celebrate and commemorate them in a museum when they are no longer around.
If we miss trying to preserve this heritage, we would have lost a part of us, I think, as a country.
So we have such a rich culture. When we're able to translate it onto screen, it's so exciting because it's such an easy way of communicating who we are and our identities to other people around the world.
March. We've been dating for over a year now, and I think it's about time people met my beautiful girlfriend.
I think for a film like Crazy Rich Asians, the co-production or the collaboration in that sense is more about, you know, being able to work with the expectations of a Hollywood film. When you're doing a film like Crazy Rich Asians, it's scale. And when you talk about scales, you're talking about 200 cast, crew, 30 trucks going into the tightest spots like Chimes. And all those sorts of logistical aspects needs to be managed.
It has gone on to make more than $200 million worldwide, entertain countless audiences around the world. And in a way, that project, that film has brought a global awareness actually of Singapore as a country, but also Singapore filmmaking capacities.
For all the 300-odd local crew that were involved in such a large-scale film that has really made history.
I made my first film in 2004. So it's about 3 boys playing football in a void deck and getting chased away by a policeman. I didn't know anything about filmmaking or cameras, but we just took a handy cam and went ahead and shot our own film. So that was actually my film school. And the film got viral when I put it up on the internet. And that's when I thought, like, hey, I could maybe have a shot at this.
I think the next step we can take fundamentally is we really have to continue to nurture our local talents, provide the platform for them to grow and to tell compelling stories. You know, just go back and be critical to ourselves. What is this compelling story that we want to tell? Be it indie film or mainstream film.
The last thing you want to make is a forgettable film. You know, you want to make it really good so people can't stop talking about it, or really bad until really no one can stop talking about it. But the last thing you want to do is to make a film that nobody talks about. You know, and it scares me. And I feel that what I want to do with films is actually to say something about what I feel about life.
Okay, so you have done a film, then what else? I think it's also about thinking how we're gonna get audience to come watch the film, and not just like, oh, okay, let's put it up and then it'll be done and be out in 2 weeks. I think it needs to be more ambitious than that. It needs to be a constant, like, okay, I finish a film, how can we, you know, have the maximum reach of the kind of audience you want to have watch your film, not just in Singapore, but regionally or outside of Singapore.
People's eyeballs are going elsewhere and not just movies anymore. So it's a global trend and a problem that we are also facing in Singapore. So I think we have to try other ways to capture the audience's attention. Like, for example, branch out to creating content for OTT platforms, creating content for like YouTube and like different ways to tell stories.
With digital platforms now, I think more people are watching more films are being made, and more content is being watched every second, you know, on your phone, while you're taking the train, while you're walking down the pavement. So that definitely is good news for the creative industry.
My sister grew up in a world with no DVDs. She's 16 years younger than I am. I've got family gathering where kids going up to the TV and doing this.
As much as people are staying at home to watch a laptop, but why I'm also questioning, why are people still going to the theatre?
It's a very special experience to be able to be in a hall that's dark, to be able to see images on such a big screen, the impact of it, and the space that a cinema allows you to think.
And what I really enjoy is after watching a film, you walk away from the cinema still in that world that it had presented you. You're still lost in that world that you just watched, and talking to your friends or your family about it. I think that's really fun because I think it's a way of bonding also. It's a way of it's an entertainment as well. But whereas if you watch it on a laptop, it's a more personal experience, which is also an experience on its own. So I actually don't mind both ways of viewing.
With the advent of social networks, you have a device on your pocket that just connects you to everyone across the world. You're able to find a certain niche community. Globally, it's just that community is a lot bigger. And I think with that device, you can actually converse and have conversations. So you have two experiences where you can watch that together with physically with friends, but at the same time, maybe extend that conversation across with a wider kind of like network of like-minded people.
Always good to have a bit of competition, because when you have that, you will you will push yourself to be better.
Overall quality will be forced to increase, and only the best will remain.
Eventually, cinema is not the only platform for audience to watch film, right? If our film can get into one of these OTT players, why not? And we can work with them.
More and more people are getting curious about films because at the end of the year, sometime around November, December, there's this huge events and there's so much films. And so I think it's helped to create that awareness. And as a filmmaker, it's also helped me be part of a community where I can get to meet like-minded people.
This year I have a short film in SGIFS. So that's my first time having a film in there. It's a great platform to showcase new Singaporean and Southeast Asian directors.
A film festival in general, the purpose of it is to bring together people and stories. But the best thing that comes out of it is the interaction, the chance to meet your film heroes, a lot of inspiration comes about. So people are inspired to make films, talk about it. It comes down to the community.
This film festival has been going on for almost 30 years already. So it has a very important role to cultivate literacy, film literacy in Singapore.
There's 5 million people in Singapore. We need to try and reach out to have more of our films seen and appreciated.
I think every audience, as every filmmakers or communities, they need to be educated in a way. We cannot force everyone to like a certain kind of cinema, and I think plurality is very important. But I think as filmmakers are growing up and the film industry in Singapore, or local film industry in Singapore is also increasing in terms of value. And I think that there's also an audience that is following up, that is increasing, that is more interesting of the local tales.
I think we have the quantity and the different type of filmmaker. Everyone is doing different things. You know, there's people that like to do genre films. There's people that like to do the super esoteric art house. There's people that are not necessarily interested in making films in Singapore, but interested in making films outside of Singapore. So you've got all this variety of people in the industry making interesting works.
If we keep making Singapore films, if we keep showing them, keep having the platform to show, then things will change.
I hope that we see more and more films coming out from Singapore, all co-productions with Singapore talents to enhance the industry within this region. For a country that is, you know, not so big, it's saying a lot of things, and that's really fabulous.
I think, you know, it will help a great deal if it can also develop the next generation of cinema film audience, which is again very important. To improve the film literacy of the population.
Literacy is not going to be something that's going to change in 5 years. It's going to be longer than that. And that's only going to happen when we create that culture of like being proud of our local work.
Exposure is important. And I'm really hoping that we would have a young generation of audiences that's going to be curious, there's going to be risk takers. You know, it's like trying different types of food. If we do that with food, why don't we do that with cinema?
It's for our culture, you know, and it's for our time, and you know, in decades to come, we'll reflect back and look at these films. And I think we have been able to actually create very, very strong films in the last 20 years. For a country with only 4 million Singaporeans, I think we've traveled very far, and there are really some aces within the industry.
Film is a powerful tool where it can give a voice to the weak and the minority. I feel empowered when I can use this tool to tell a story.
Moving forward, I hope as a film community we're going to go into having more stories to tell about Singapore.
It's my hope for the film industry that we can be truly diverse, both in the works that we do, things that we show in our theatres.
I wish to grow together with this new generation of filmmakers, to support them whenever I can.
Now that we are kind of diversifying into so many different types of films, the industry is getting better.
I'm still looking for that story that I feel that I want to tell, and I feel a strong conviction of telling.
Now we need to continue building up this momentum that has already been rolling. We can't stop.